10, 9, ignition sequence start, 6.
Hello and welcome to Rocket Fuel, your daily update of everything that's happening in the Rocket Fuel community. My name is Wack. Today is November 22nd, and we're actually going to go over something from a couple of days ago's episode, which was the governance digest that Val posted. So I briefly addressed that there was a bunch of governance stuff that was happening and that people can get involved in that if they wanted to at least provide sentiment. But the episode was already getting really long, so I didn't really dig into what each of the things were. So I figured it'd be a good place to start today's episode so we can all know kind of what's going on and what we can do about that. So here's going over Val's post really quickly. He says there's a sentiment poll for RPIP 31, sentiment poll for RPIP 32, again for RPIP 33 and RPIP 35. And he says 4 sentiment polls are live. RPIP 35 has been live for a week. All others went up recently. He says, remember, sentiment polls are up at least a week before voting. I'd like to point out that the meta discussion about governance in the RPIP 35 forum post is worth reading, and I encourage people to chime in too. So we'll finish this segment with that discussion. So here we have RPIP 31, which is the RPL withdrawal address. So this was a topic that Kane brought up in the forum over a month ago, about 6 weeks ago, where the idea was to have a split of your withdrawal address from your node. So your ETH could go to one address and the RPL could go to a different address. This would actually be a really nice feature for marriages and other things like that. So that was cool. Wanda, was positive about it, and Ramana said, let's do it. And then the sentiment poll here seems to be like most people who have answered seem happy with this. So 60% of people say support moving to a vote. I think this proposal is great. 40% of people said this is good enough. That is still supported going to a vote. So there's quite positive sentiment for that RPIP 31. Let's have a look at RPIP 32. So this is stake ETH on behalf of a node. So right now you can stake Rocket Pool on behalf of a node. This would allow you to also stake ETH on behalf of a node as well. So this is RPIP 32. And again, this discussion was shared at the same time in the beginning of October from Kane. And there was a little bit of discussion back and forth. Like here, Ramana asked about clarify whether the withdrawal address can also still fund the node account balance as if it want the withdrawal address just like anyone else. I'm in addition to the new proposed power of funding the node with ETH to be deposited as mini pools or only withdrawn by me. And then Langa said, if I understand correctly, yes. And then Ramana says your current implementation sounds good to me. So here this moved to a sentiment poll. Here as well we've had 15 people vote. 67% of people support this proposal, and 33% said this is good enough to go to a vote. Next we have RPIP 33. I think this RPIP 33, this is the on-chain PDAO voting. So this was posted in July, which was a long time ago, and since then there's been a lot of discussion about this, and then there's back and forth, there's a lot of discussion, so you're welcome to read that discussion. But here there's a sentiment poll, and with this there's been 13 people who have voted, and 69% said this is great, and 31% said good enough. Both of them say let's move it to a vote. And then finally this is RPIP 35, which was posted 11 days ago, and this was just there wasn't really much discussion about this. It went straight to sentiment. So it says time-based balance on RPL price submissions. So it says this is a proposal to change the balance used in our ETH exchange calculation RPL price submissions to be time-based rather than block-based. The draft RPIP goes into the full rationale, and then there's a link to the RPIP. It says here's the summary. It makes the prices and balance timings more consistent, aligns these timings with RPL reward intervals, and supports node operators who want to top up before the end of a reward period. So here there have been 17 voters, and 71% said this is great, 23% said it's good enough, and 6%, which is just one voter, which is Noshua, said oppose moving to vote other. So then Nosho gave a reason saying this shouldn't go to vote. The team has implemented this change and decided to include it in the Houston upgrade before even writing the RPIP. In reality, there are two separate paths for protocol changes, RPIPs and team initiated. We shouldn't muddy the waters by voting on RPIPs that already made it through the second path. And there is a reason why RPIP 35 makes it into Houston, while RPIP 30 doesn't, despite being more impactful, having loads more community support, being of similar implementation difficulty, and being written multiple months earlier. It's important that the PDAO is clear about this to set realistic expectations for RPIP authors. So Valdov here says, I disagree with Nosho's conclusion, but the sentiment absolutely resonates with me. Given where we are now, I would prefer that this have an RPIP and get voted on by the PDAO. If it fails to get ratified by the PDAO, the feature should get removed from Houston. I absolutely agree that it does feel like we currently have a two-tier system. The component of RPIP 30 that needs a smart contract change has been largely unchanged since the initial draft merged on September 3rd. If we're proactively developing ahead of votes, that seems like it should have gotten attention. On the opposite end, the team have routinely talked about what the Houston upgrade is prior to a vote. Language matters, and I really wish we were careful to have phrases reinforcing that PDAO is the decision maker, such as the team is hoping to include pending ratification if the PDAO accepts, etc. One possible path could help here is having high level votes. Let's move the PDAO on chain and follow up with detailed votes that fully specify things. For me, I'm chalking this up to learning how to DAO effectively, and I'm hoping to see us get better over time. So Nosho says nothing wrong with having this as an RPIP, it just should be an informational one because that's what it is. I'm not sure what the language you are suggesting would help anything. I think it's pretty clear that the decision what goes into Houston was made by the team a while ago, and there was no opportunity for PDAO to set different priorities. I don't think this is a communication issue, this is a process issue. I'm all for learning and improving over time, but my experience that begins with acknowledging what's wrong and calling a spade, treating the Houston RPIPs as regular RPIPs while we have zero acknowledgement of the two-tier system exists feels like sweeping this under the rug. And then Langas here made a reply saying the PDAO ratify everything that goes live. If they feel strongly that this or any RPIP should not go live, we cannot release it and it would be removed. I apologize if it feels like a two-tier system. This is clearly not the intention. The team have been talking openly about these features for months. We didn't expect to have pushback on them. So I think, like to interject, I don't think it's pushback on the features. It's more the pushback on the process, as in like the PDAO should be involved much more early on. So that's just my interjection. And then back to Langas, he says, from our perspective, RPIP 30 was not certain to be ratified. Valdov has done an excellent job of building consensus, but we were not aware of how positive the sentiment was for this change. Clearly we need to pay more attention, but even still we're not sure how the vote would go, hence why we didn't start development work on it. Also, the audits for Houston had to be booked in, and they were literally the Monday after the vote closed. We were already rushed to get feature complete, and we did not have the time to include RPIP 30 as well. This will of course get RPIP 30 and RPIP 28 into a release as early as we can. He says, I agree with both of you. We try very hard to make sure our communication is mindful of the governance process, but we haven't always got it right. The process is evolving and feedback like this is extremely important. The team are dedicated to making this work. Most of the friction is caused by assumptions and grey areas, which as the process improves will be resolved. This is an easy process to get right. From our side, I will continue to work on a unified process within the community. The most important thing is that we maintain this collaborative relationship. I see Rocket Pool as a whole. There are dynamics between the team and the PDAO, but I do believe that we made significant progress and will continue to do so. And Valdov here has replied by saying, I agree. I think this is about RPIP 30. He says, I agree. I think this might be the disconnect here. The implementation is that you are sure how all 4 of the votes to ratify the team features will go. Let me come at this slightly differently. If the team says we've already written the code for RPIP 30 and I think it should go into Houston, would you still have expected an uncertain vote? The certainty of the vote changes the team support with the team support itself. And then he says the team's been talking openly about this feature for months. He says this doesn't match my perception. Certainly true for on-chain PDAO, which is the headline feature for Houston. I don't think I knew RPIP 31 and 32 were planned for Houston until they got post as draft RPIPs in late September. I definitely didn't know RPIP 35 was planned for Houston until that was posted about a week ago. I keep up with Discord and forum. There's a possibility I missed it anyhow, or some of this was in Twitter Spaces or something I shouldn't know. I have heard all of these features or variations of them get discussed informally much before that, but that's also true for dozens of other features, and is different than targeted for inclusion. And then Langer says, the PDAO ratify everything else that goes live, feels strongly, but this RPIP should not be live. We cannot release it and it would be removed. And then Valdov says, worth being very explicit in this. Thank you. He says, this is an easy process to get right. And Valdov says, strong agree. Our ODAO is far from perfect. Our DAO is far from perfect, but we feel fairly positive about how we look versus the field in the current stage plus trajectory. And then I'm going to stop covering it here because there's still some more discussion between Noshua, Langers, and more of Langers. But I'll just read out Noshua's reply here. It says, and what made you certain that Houston RPIPs would? From my perspective, there are fine things to do, but there are other things that are more pressing. I haven't had the opportunity to express that view, and even at this point, the only option that is given is to delay Houston RPIPs. So by inverting the process, you are influencing the outcomes of the votes pretty heavily. So that's his Langer's reply to Noshua by saying, feedback taken on board. We'll start the RPIP process much earlier so the community have plenty of time to co-develop and indicate a priority, which I think would be really, really good going forward. So if you have any opinions on this discussion, definitely visit this RPIP 35 thread, and people are taking this kind of process feedback quite seriously, so it's a good time to make your opinion known. Okay, next we had these submissions from the ODAO. Actually, I should just leave it there. So we had a whole bunch of submissions coming in a few hours ago, about 5 hours ago now, where ODAO members were submitting the submitted prices, as you can see here from the transaction type, method, contract interaction. So we got those in, and that means that we now have the price set for this month's rewards period. And here we had Sneaky who shared it. The ratio, which was the minimum 10% collateral, will be at locked at 0.0134. So this is the RPL price at which the snapshot will use for today's calculations. So that is the price that you'll have to use to make sure that you have 10% collateral. So by the time you're watching this episode, if it's on Wednesday still, then you have got about 10 hours to update your node to have the right amount of RPL to make sure you get your rewards to get up to 10%, at least what the threshold is now. So this is the ratio that you have to have at your rewards to get the 10%. So if you want to top up your validators, then do that as soon as possible, because then you'll get your rewards or you won't get your rewards. And Sneaky was definitely on top of that today. I think he had the information in trading a matter of minutes after the confirmations went through on the contract. So good job. That actually spurned a little bit of a discussion about what it means to have the snapshot taken, and what it means to have the price updated, and then the snapshot taken. So the price update changes every, I think, 19 or something hours. Let's actually have a look. We can work it out. It changes every 1 day and 13 minutes. So yeah, it's every 19 hours the price updates, or somewhere around there. So some days it's closer to this to the rewards period ending, and some days a little bit further away. Today was one of those where it was still 14 or 15 hours away, so it gave people pretty much a whole day to know what the price at the time of snapshot will be. So that price basically says each validator you have, your node, all the validators on your node, they need to be this amount of RPL, and then you have basically those hours before the rewards period ends to get up to that level. So there was a bit of discussion about this in trading, so I thought I'd just cover it for a second, so you all could figure that out as well. Okay, this is a really interesting tweet that came out, and it was from Into the Block, who released some research. I don't have access to the research, so if someone wants to share that with me, I'll happily have a look at it. But here, Champagne Mami says, according to Into the Block's perspectives, RPL seems to have the highest amount of holders in profitability, boosting boasting of about 85% holders in profit in the Ethereum ecosystem as of November 19th. So this is actually really interesting data here. So if you have a look, this is, I think, over this calendar year, and starting this calendar year, the RPL price is pretty much exactly where it was. No, this is not price rate. This is how many users are in profitability. So as you can see, the profitability like strongly declined right after the peak of the bull market in like around the RPL bull market around Shanghai and Atlas. But then since then, it's kind of been trending back upwards with a few little dips. But it seems like 85% of people who hold RPL are currently, as of the beginning of this year, are in profits. Whereas if you look at like pretty much almost every other major Ethereum token that's on this list here, you have Link, Uni, Lido, Aave, Maker, Render, SNX, Sand, AXS, and Mana. Almost all of those are like way down, with some of them being really, really down, and some of them just being slightly above as well. But because I don't have the chart handy, I can't really go into too much detail there. But I think that's really good. It's kind of nice that pairs with the report that came out last year that was saying that RPL holders are the biggest whales in crypto by portfolio value. I think what they were saying was like, if you take the number of holders divided by market cap of the token, then on average the RPL holders have the biggest amount each, and that was like, people dug into that, and there was some criticism of that research as well, but it was, I think, a really interesting indicator. And I really like this as well, that so many people in the RPL community are in profit, which is wonderful to see. I really would love to like dig into these numbers more, but sadly I don't have access to that information. Okay, next we're going to be talking about some stuff that's kind of not directly related to Rocket Pool. The big news yesterday was CZ of Binance making a deal with the US government and accepting a fine of $4 billion, and also stepping down as the CEO of Binance. And then we got Richard Teng, who replaced him. And there's details in this post about how he's stepping down and why he's stepping down, and that everything at Binance is okay and everything's going to be fine, and he's just like kind of chilling basically. So he gives $4 billion, and I think everything goes away. And this was like one of the last big FUD things that was going that was still hanging over from the previous bull market and like the bear. And it seems like this is another tick box that now has been kind of resolved, I guess. Mostly I guess the last one maybe standing is like the Tether FUD, but I don't know where we stand with that. But that's I think the big one. And Justin Sun as well, like there's some fuddy stuff around there as well. So who knows what's going to happen with those two. But a lot of the bad actors from the last bull and bear market now have seemed to be dealt with in one way or another. And this was such a big story that even made mainstream news, like here in The Guardian, which is a newspaper from the UK. It says crypto giant Binance admits to money laundering and agrees to pay $4.3 billion. So what's really interesting is that you can actually see that transaction happening on chain, which is really interesting. And there was a Tron move of like $3.9 billion, and I guess that was part of paying the US government. Okay, finally, we're going to finish with this bombshell story from Lido. So Lido released this tweet saying, over the course of the last 24 hours, Lido DAO contributors were made aware of an earlier platform vulnerability affecting an active node operator using Lido on the Ethereum protocol. So that's Infstones. More information here, and then there's a Lido research thing. It says the vulnerability is related to the possible exposure of root level access to 25 validated servers that may or may not have been related to the Lido protocol. Lido contributors are actively working with the node operator on investigating the incident to understand its full scope and potential impact. More information will be shared in the coming hours. To clarify, there is currently no indication of key leakage or compromise, and the vulnerability may not affect validators related to Lido protocol. So that was Lido's statement on the matter. However, there was a bunch of other stories that were kind of coming out. So here there's this Elad Ernst says the $1 billion exploit collecting validators' private keys via Web 2 attack. So here it says blockchain security is usually associated with smart contracts or cryptography attacks. In most cases, people do not consider the security of the actual servers of the network as part of the blockchain security. In fact, even the bug bounty programs tend to ignore a major component of the network, the validators. Our research focused on attacking blockchain networks from a more traditional angle. The basic idea is to treat blockchain networks' central service validators as regular cloud servers and attack them using classical techniques. A chain of vulnerabilities was discovered and exploited during our research, allowed us to gain full control, run code, and extract private keys of hundreds of validators on multiple major networks, potentially leading to direct losses equivalent to over $1 billion in cryptocurrencies such as ETH, BNB, SUI, Aptos, and many others. These validators are hosted by a validator infrastructure provider called InfStones, a reference to the Infinity Stones in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where the supervillain Thanos slowly collects Infinity Stones, because once he hoards all of them, he is able to yield absolute power. That happens to be an extremely useful metaphor to help explain the attack vector we describe in this post. By attacking the validator that run a distributed network separately and collecting over time their private keys, the same way Thanos collected Infinity Stones, sophisticated attackers can gain unlimited power over the network and either denial of service it or control it entirely. And of course, with Ethereum, if you have the private keys of those, so of course with Ethereum validators, what can happen is if you run the private keys of a node on another machine, then you could have a huge slashing instance. And with Lido here, they have about 7,000 validators on each one of their clients. And that could lead to 7,000 ETH, and I'm not sure if that's the threshold for multiplying the slashing penalties, because so many validators get slashed at the same time. But it might be, in which case it would probably be more than 7,000 ETH lost. But with other networks here, such as BNB, SUI, and Aptos as well, the damages could have been up to $1 billion. So this was a huge piece of news that came out, and the private keys seems like they were leaked as well for Lido. So then here Hani Abu has digs into that report, and he says research by D-Wallet Labs reported Lido Finance node operator Infinity Stones had their validator keys exposed. This left 320,000 ETH vulnerable. If the keys, so 10,000 validators, so I guess at least 10,000 could have been slashed. He says if the keys were used to get the validator slashed, that loss was to be socialized across all ST-ETH holders, which would have been a big chunk of ETH there. So he says the vulnerabilities disclosed by this blog post could have been exploited to steal private keys of Ethereum validators, totaling to at least 1.2% of Ethereum stake, and probably much more. And then they give details in the blog, which you should go and read, which is significant potential first step in such an attack. Motivated malicious attack groups could have found this vulnerability, exploited and stolen these private keys, and kept them for Judgment Day, when they could have collected enough private keys to control the network, which is why we recommend that Infinity Stones change the validator keys of all exposed validators. And then here Patches had a really interesting point, saying if I've stolen all these keys, why not extort Lido, the entire entity, to join my attack on Ethereum? If they don't play ball, I can drop the value of ST-ETH for all holders, even if only one node operator was compromised. Self-limiting isn't just about threats from within, it's also about threats from without. So that was kind of like mind-blowing for Ryan Beckermans. And here ETH Maxi says anyone staking with Lido at this point is rolling dice. There's so many other options available. There's no reason to take on that centralization risk. And oh my OMG, Benito says wow. So those were in reply to what Hani, the quote from the blog that Hani shared. And finally we can pop over to Discord here, where Noshua was one of the people who shared the link, and then there was some discussion here about what happened and what's going on. And Patches says, you exit every validator on every impacted machine, plug the hole, and relaunch them all, right? Because professional, right? So this was, part of the whole professional validators thing, them putting themselves at such a risk. Like even for my personal node, I set up security systems in the way, I've got firewalls, I've got two-factor authentication, I've got a whole bunch of other things like SSH keys and all this kind of stuff that is required to get access to my node machine. And these guys that being professionals left a huge vulnerability in their access to their root, which is shocking, like truly shocking. And then Huarog shared the blog that we looked at. Infinity Stone's website claimed they're validated as 100% secure, but they evidently were not, because it seemed like they were collected. But this is kind of where we stand. So Lido is just a huge risk that's not worth it. Please move away from Lido is the message to all of Ethereum. But like, I don't know why people just aren't getting it. It's their dominance actually going back up. So who knows what's going on. But anyway, thank you all for watching, listening, and being part of the Rocket Fuel community. There won't be an episode tomorrow, but there will be an episode on Friday to make up for the one that I missed on Friday. I wasn't expecting to do one on Friday, but I most likely will now. But I'll see you all soon. Have a happy Thanksgiving for those of you in the US and those who are celebrating. Bye.